So thank you for coming back. Although Adam didn't come back. Adam was sat down here, and he came up to me and said to me, "I'm not going to come back." But he said, "Don't worry, it's not because I'm taking the blue one." He said, "I am very committed to the red one, but I need to get back. Something important has come up." So I just thought I'd relay Adam's message. So yeah, welcome back, and let's recap where we are and where we're going. We've done the big picture stuff. Hopefully that's provoked some new thinking, some new thoughts. But ultimately, as business people, we're practical, pragmatic, and we need to convert the thinking into action. So that the rest of the session is going to be all about how do we do this. I'm assuming now that you get it, that you're willing to experiment, and it's now more about, okay, if I want to do this, and if I want to rely on the power of trust, how do I do that? And so in terms of the book, and a couple of people have asked me about the book, that the first 3 chapters of the book is what we've been covering. So if you're curious about any of those concepts that are in that part of the journey, that's in the first 3 chapters of the book. And everything else, so the remaining 7 chapters of this book are all about the how. How do I do this? So, as I say, at any point, if there's more input you need around any part of it, then there's the website, various downloadable resources out there, which maybe Chris will just share a little bit more about later. So, at the end of the Matrix clip, Morpheus says, "Follow me." And we're thinking, where are we going? So the exciting thing for us now as leaders is that if we think that the old model is going, there's an opportunity to build something new. So we are now architecting a different model of business. And when I said the architects of the old model were 19th century economists, the architects of this new model are 21st century psychologists. So psychologists are the new architects. Economists are the old architects. In our country, in the UK, psychology is by far the most popular university degree course. When I went to university myself and did chemistry, nobody did psychology because it wasn't a serious subject. That's a measure of the change, that the psychologists have become very important to us. And they are the people who are influencing the why behind these new models. So we're building a new temple because not enough of us are willing to worship in the temple of profit anymore. So first of all, we need a new God of business. And I talked about profit being like oxygen, that we all need it. Our businesses have to generate it. We can't survive without it. But in this new model, profit is the passport into the next stage of the game. It's the start of the journey, not the end of the journey. Because profit was the single bottom line, but the new model is based on this concept called the triple bottom line. Has anybody come across that phrase before? So the triple bottom line is not something that I've created. It's a phrase that was originally created by an author called John Elkington. He wrote a book called Cannibals with Forks. And he created this concept, the triple bottom line. And the triple bottom line is sometimes described as profit, people, planet. In my book, and the subtitle of my book is called 9 Leadership Habits That Inspire Results, Relationships, and Reputation. So I talk about the triple bottom line as results, relationships, reputation. I think that's just a little bit more practical. But you'll also hear it referred to as profit, people, planet. And basically what it's saying is that the future organizations will have goals, KPIs, and measurements as ruthlessly around people and planet as they currently do around profit. Now, we had the question earlier about is there a case study of an organization or a leader that is actually putting this into action as a positive success story? And so the example I would use, particularly around triple bottom line, is Unilever. So Paul Polman is the CEO of Unilever, one of the largest multinationals on the planet. He was appointed in 2009. And on his first day in office in his job as CEO, he stopped the quarterly financial forecasting of results to the city from Unilever. He was asked later in an interview why he did that on day one, and he said, if I'd have done it on day 100, they would have sacked me. And that's him basically saying that he started his job, and on day one he said, I'm taking the red one, and you either like it or you're going to get rid of me. But the maximum opportunity for him to gamble on that was on day one, because it's quite hard to sack somebody on the first day. It's much easier to sack someone after 100 days. So he knew that he's immediately saying, I'm creating a vision for Unilever that isn't simply a slave to profit. He then implemented a plan which in Unilever is called the Sustainable Living Plan. And that's a triple bottom line vision for Unilever, implemented in 2010. And the Sustainable Living Plan stated a goal for Unilever to double revenue, increase profitability, halve the carbon footprint, and lift 1 billion people out of poverty around the world by 2020. So that's what a triple bottom line vision sounds like and feels like. And if you go back to this point about the why, how many of us and how many of our children would rather work for a company with a vision like that compared to a company that has a vision which is profit, 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 profit? So Unilever set sail down that path with its Sustainable Living Plan. We're now 9 years into that vision, and the share price of Unilever has gone from £12 to £40. It's now the number 3 employee brand in the world behind Apple and Google, and it's on track to lift 1 billion people out of poverty through its personal care and hygiene products. So far, the results of the experiment are good. Nevertheless, last year, Unilever was subject to a hostile takeover bid from Kraft, a company called Kraft. There's nobody here connected with Kraft. Kraft's one of the biggest, baddest blue pill organisations on the planet. And it came munching along, thinking, let's take Unilever out and let's make it into this blue thing again. Huge sort of fight about that, involving a lot of parties. The bid was actually called off, and the experiment continues. But who knows, tomorrow Kraft might mount another bid. So, this is a sort of, maybe calling it a battle is too dramatic a word, but there's definitely, not everyone's a believer, but some people are. And, we're not at a point where we've completely proven that it works and this is the future. It's just experimentation. But Unilever and Paul Polman very kindly wrote the foreword for my book, and that for me was a great privilege and inspiration, because he right now for me is the leader on the global stage of business who is most bravely role modeling these principles and these habits. And if you Google Paul Polman, listen to some of his YouTube talks, he is out there definitely wanting to talk about his experience and spread this sort of type of work. So I think it's very encouraging. If you can do it in Unilever, on the one hand, you could say he's got all the resources and all the scale to do it, but on the other hand, shifting an oil tanker is a big, big challenge. So I think large companies have some advantages, but they have some disadvantages in making this shift. But certainly Unilever are a great and very high-profile example. I listened to a speaker about a year ago called Dr. Tim Jones. He heads up an organisation called Future Agenda, and their job is to, again, conduct surveys about mega trends around the world. He was sharing with the audience in London the 10 mega trends for the next 10 years. One of the mega trends was that any organisation whose sole purpose is profit will be unsustainable by 2025. Now again, is he right? Is he wrong? I don't know. But that's his view, and he's done a lot of research to come to that conclusion. So again, in terms of you and your organisations, it's just continually asking that question: where are we on this cycle? Do we have a clear triple bottom line vision? Do we measure that with KPIs? Do we bake that into our processes and our ways of being as a company, or are we still worshipping in that profit, profit, profit? paradigm. So we've got a new God, but we need some new sacred pillars to hold up the temple. And we're working on the assumption, and we had an interesting conversation at the break about fear and trust, that fear is a glue. Fear sort of can hold things together, but my own view is that it's actually not a sustainable glue. It eventually leads to things falling apart. Now, sometimes that can take many, many years, but nevertheless, is it a sustainable glue to hold this new model together? And I'm looking at this as a practical thing, not as a moral thing, particularly. My own sort of view is trust is a super glue. Trust is the stickiest and the most durable glue to hold cultures together over a period of time. The difficult thing with trust is it's a bit like fear. It's a big, vague, emotional, abstract word. And therefore, as practical people, how do we get our arms around it so that we can make it work day to day? And that's where models come in. That's where breaking things down and getting a more detailed grasp of the picture can help us. Good news with trust is that the academics who have been researching trust over the last 30 years, they know what trust is made up of. I mean, they can answer that question and they can back it up with hard scientific research. So we know from that research that trust is made of 3 pillars: ability, integrity, benevolence. Now, ability, so in other words, I as the leader, I need to be competent at the job that you are paying me to do. I need to have my best practices. I need to deliver results. I need to do that on a consistent basis. And then I tick the pillar of ability. Integrity. So I need to be honest, open. I need to walk the talk. I need to have my ethics, my values, and I need to exhibit that and role model that as a leader. And I tick the integrity box. And then this strange word benevolence. So when I came across this formula for the first time in the research, I come across this word benevolence and I think, what does benevolence mean? What has benevolence got to do with leadership? To the extent that I go and look up what the word actually means in the dictionary, and I find out that benevolence comes from the Latin words benevolent, which literally means wishing well for others. And I realized that benevolence is common human care, compassion, kindness. And I'm thinking, why didn't anybody ever tell me about that in 30 years of leadership life? And it came back to me that when I had that moment, that epiphany, that moment with my group CEO back in Logica, when he told me, John, you're too effing nice, I realized what he meant was, what he was saying was, John, we don't need that benevolence bullshit around here. Yeah? And actually, it was probably true in the old model. You didn't need it in the old model. We could outsource it. So business could outsource benevolence. Now you might ask, where did it outsource it to? I don't know. That's a bigger question. But in the previous business model didn't need it. But if you want to build a culture that is triple bottom line focused, where trust is the glue, you need to insource benevolence back into the picture. And the reason you need to insource it is that the sting of those 3 pillars is in the maths of the formula. The maths of the formula of trust is not that trust is ability add integrity, add benevolence. It's that trust is ability times integrity, times benevolence. So the sting in the maths is that if you score 0 on any one pillar, your trustworthiness is 0. So I could be the most competent, successful leader. I could be honest as the day is long. If I'm routinely negligent or careless about my stakeholders, they won't trust me. The opportunity of the formula is, if I score in the upper quartile on all 3 pillars as a leader, then big numbers multiply by big numbers to create even bigger numbers. So if you do want to make a competitive advantage out of trust in your leadership or in your brand, scoring high consistently on these 3 pillars is what will generate that reputation over a period of time. Any questions about the formula? So, let's see this in action. Let's see trust in action, or actually let's see losing trust in action. Anybody recognize the guy sat in the back of the taxi here? This is a guy called Travis Kalanick, who is the ex-CEO of Uber. And the reason that Travis Kalanick is ex-CEO of Uber is because of incidents like the one I'm going to show you, where a leader who had disrupted the financial model of a whole industry on a global scale, so in terms of ability, had been profoundly successful, and also where there is no immediate reason to question his integrity, but nevertheless, in this video, has what I call a benevolence bypass. And this, plus one or two other moments like it, led to his removal from that position by the investors of the company. So it's the investors that removed him from the position because they felt that he was now becoming a liability to the brand. The new chief executive of Uber has come in to that post a few months ago, wrote an email to all the employees after a couple of weeks and issued them the challenge that he felt that they needed to change Uber from being a great product to being a great company that meaningfully contributes to society beyond the bottom line. That's triple bottom line thinking. He's basically saying it's not sufficient now for us to have a great product or a great service. We need to be a great company. And great companies contribute beyond the bottom line. So let's see this video clip. Now, what you're seeing in this video clip is transparency in action, because we're going to watch a clip of Travis Kalanick having a conversation with one of his own drivers at the end of an evening. Now, 15 years ago, we would never have known about this conversation because we were living in a world that was opaque and not transparent. What was happening in this taxi is that there's a webcam recording the conversation. And again, that video gets released, goes viral, and we'll see what happened next. But as you look at the video and as you listen to the conversation, I'd just like you to think about those three pillars: ability, integrity, benevolence. Think about those three pillars and think about the behavior you see, and then let's have a bit of a discussion about how you see that behavior showing up and whether Travis Kalanick is ticking the pillars of trust.
An Uber driver got into an argument with a passenger who happened to be Uber's CEO. Here's Ben Tracy.
You're pushing that off.
This video obtained by Bloomberg News shows Uber CEO Travis Kalanick swaying to the music in the backseat of an Uber black car. But at the end of the ride, he also gets an earful from the driver, identified as Fazi Kamel.
You're raising the standards and you're dropping the prices.
Kamel tells Kalanick drastic cuts in Uber rates have hurt him financially.
I lost $97,000 because of you. I bankrupt because of you. Look. Yes. You keep changing every day. You keep changing.
Hold on a
every
second.
day.
What have I changed about black?
Huh?
What
you
have I
changed
changed?
the whole business.
What?
You dropped the prices.
On black.
Yes, you did.
Bull-
We started with $20. Started with $20.
You know what?
How much is the mile now? $2.75?
Some people don't like to take responsibility for
I
their
take
own
it.
In a memo to Uber employees last night, Kalanick apologized, writing, "It's clear this video is a reflection of me. I must fundamentally change as a leader and grow up. This is the first time I've been willing to admit that I need leadership help, and I intend to get it."
So in that last email that he sent, if I would paraphrase him, what he said is, we could paraphrase it as, I've been taking this one. Last night I had a big shock because I realized the world had changed, and I'm now committed to doing something differently. Now, we can assess the sincerity of that note. We don't know, because I don't know Travis Kalanick personally. Nevertheless, he never got the opportunity to do any growing up in that role, because of that video and a couple of other incidents, he was out of that job within 2 months. So that's a leader's brand getting caught up in this trust crisis, and how quickly it can become, you can go from being an asset to a liability because of the reputational impact of some of these incidents. So I'd just like you to with the person next to you, just have a conversation about the conversation that you listen to there, and think about those three pillars: ability, integrity, benevolence. What did you hear? What did you see Travis doing and saying that undermined trust? And then we'll have a discussion about that together. So just take literally a couple of minutes to reflect on that and talk with your neighbour. Let's talk about what's come up in your conversations there. What did you observe about Travis Kalanick's behaviour when looking at his ability, his integrity, his benevolence in that clip?
The guy was just getting home just a bit drunk or whatever, and now we are kind of evaluating him. Like, it can be everything.
I know. If I'd have shown you that video 10 years ago, we'd be talking about the driver, not the CEO. We'd be talking about how rude the driver was. How could you possibly treat someone in authority like that?
Like, why should we discuss his behavior because he was just not in the mood or whatever? Like,
Yeah.
does it say everything about his career and his abilities?
So he'd had a couple of drinks, he just had a big row with his wife, he's had a really bad day, and you catch him at the wrong moment.
Yeah.
And can we all be caught at a wrong moment? Yes, we can. But the measure of the lack of trust out there is that you as the leader are guilty until proven innocent. We've already decided that you're guilty. And we just need a little bit of evidence like that to confirm our view, and we'll immediately tip into that judgment of being very ruthless with the assessment of that behaviour and ignoring any of the circumstances that might have been involved in leading up to it. Who knows? The clip could have been edited and created and whatever. But the point is, enough people believe that he is the one who was in the wrong. And that's what counts ultimately until it changes. I showed that clip with a group a few months ago, and somebody said, "Are you saying, John, that we have to behave as leaders as if we're being videoed 24 hours a day?" And I said, "Yes." And then they said, "Well, that's a very difficult job description, isn't it?" And I went, "Yeah, but it's the job you applied for. If you don't want the job, then don't apply for it." But in a transparent world, we are on public show, and we will be judged at 11 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock in the morning, on our holidays. That appears to be the territory.
Right now we're kind of discussing not really his ability, integrity, but really like how it looks like.
Yeah, we're back into perception and reality and how it's presented to us. But what I'm saying to you is that the reality of the world, of the perception at the moment, is that he lost his job. That's a fact. Yeah. So we're then saying, okay, I'm assessing that. He did that, then he lost his job. What are the implications of that for me? How does that influence me as a leader? And we could say, well, it's irrelevant, I'm ignoring it. Or we could say, it is relevant, I might need to take notice of it.
Are you sure that he has lost his job because of this video?
Well, that's
Be sure we are ready to connect two things which are not necessarily dependent on each other. Okay.
It's the story that's out there. It's the story that's out there. If you go out and look and say, why was he sacked? The answer you'll get is because of reputational incidents like that. Yeah, this was probably the tipping point, the final straw. There've been another couple of incidents involving alleged sexual harassment, etc.
Business results.
His financial model in terms of the market share and the degree of users has obviously been a fantastic success story in terms of the valuation of the company. So, at that level, I would hazard a guess that 10 years ago he would still be in his job. We would not see in that video. He would still be in his job. But
I don't know.
We don't know.
I was asking the question.
Yeah. It's. We ultimately, with this sort of thing, we're having to make our own minds up, aren't we? We're having to say, is it different? Has the world changed or not? And if it hasn't, we can carry on doing exactly what we did. If it has, we might need to reflect and do things differently. What else in terms of his behaviours, or any observations on that clip? I mean, just interesting. Maybe we do a show of hands, right, on this. If you think it was unfair that he got sacked because of that, let's have a show of it. How many people think it was unfair that he was sacked as a result of that video clip? Yeah. 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 So?
Because we are human beings, so if the reason is just the video,
yeah,
it's unfair.
Okay.
Because he's a leader, make mistakes, he realized it,
yeah,
he make a step
yep,
against it, so yeah, we are human beings,
yep,
not
machines.
machines.
Yeah, yeah, fair point. Yep.
And I don't believe that we have the full truth. We don't have the full truth.
No.
Just a short.
It's a short clip. We don't know the context.
No.
So it could be have taken out.
Yes. Yep. True. How many of you think actually no, that was unacceptable, and he deserved to lose his job because of that incident?
So.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because he was the face of the company.
Right. So he's representing the brand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the brand value, the CEO represents a significant amount of the brand value, as we've seen with Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg, that these CEOs are personalized and have a sort of celebrity role, which then impacts the brand.
And I think anytime, and even if you like it or not, but this is the reality. So any kind of statement, whenever you do it makes consequences at the end.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. This is quite an interesting discussion, because in the UK, when I show this video, and I don't normally ask for a show of hands, but the reason I don't is because 90% of the people in the room say, yeah, there's no way we're having that. That's not acceptable. You should have been sacked, and it's just not going to work in this environment. So again, we're going to see some cultural difference around this, which is again why I'm inviting you to sort of assess it in relation to your reality, because it will be different. It will play out differently in different cultures. But many of you work for multinational organisations, so again, it's about being aware of what is the prevailing norm in that organisation, and where are the boundaries, where are the lines, because the lines might have moved from where they were 10 years ago as to what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And you don't want to be part of a situation where you misjudged that and you thought that the lines were still exactly where they were, because most of the evidence suggests that the lines have moved around what is acceptable leadership behaviour, and a lot of it's around trust and this benevolence word. I mean, we don't know about his, we couldn't assess his ability from that clip. His integrity, again, I'm not sure I would assess that, but there were certainly some statements that he made that were lacking in care. And that, for me, links to that pillar of benevolence. So, this is the formula for trust. This is an academically verified formula for trust. So if we really want to build our leadership on trust, and we're not leaning on that pillar of authority, that's what we've set as a challenge to step up to. So let's move on, because my own research was not to look at ability, integrity, and benevolence, because that's been out there for a long, long time. It may not be known a lot about in mainstream business leadership, but the theory of it's been there for years and years. The challenge for me as a coach was that I would meet leaders who get this and say, yep, I want to build my leadership brand on trust. Can you, John, as a coach, help me do that? And I didn't have a very good answer to that question 5 years ago. So that's part of my motivation to do the doctoral research at Aston Business School in the UK, in order to find out what are the behavioural habits that lead to ability, integrity, and benevolence. Because if I, as a coach, can get to the habits, then I can work with a leader to develop new habits. Because that's what coaches do. Coaches can help leaders build new habits. So I wanted to know, what are the habits that would allow a leader to move forward down this path? Now, the habits, changing habits is hard. You know, I have a habit of writing with my left hand. I can't write with my right hand. But God forbid if I woke up tomorrow morning and I was paralyzed in my left arm, would I learn to write with my right hand? Yeah. It wouldn't look very pretty to begin with, but gradually I would develop a new habit, and eventually I'd be able to write as well with this hand as I ever could with that hand. But it's hard work. You need a lot of motivation to change a habit. And everything that we've talked about up till now on this journey, is all I'm trying to do is create motivation so that you do the hard work of changing habits. If we stop the session now, you could read the book, you could take the slides. Do people change because they've got a new theory in their head? It's not typically how people change. We need to get it in the muscle of leadership, and the muscle of leadership is about habits. What habits do I have that support ability, integrity, benevolence, and what habits do I have that undermine it? And anybody who's been in leadership for more than 5 years, I would suggest, has got some bad habits in this area. And I've got some bad habits in this area, and I'll share them with you. Because it's hard not to have been conditioned by that model of business that we've had. Actually, those who've been more successful in that model are probably going to find it the hardest to change, because they've optimized it, and they've optimized their leadership around a certain context. So I'm inviting you to think about changing habits, and I'm going to spin through 9 habits: 3 habits of ability, 3 habits of integrity, 3 habits of benevolence. And these habits have come from the interviews and the surveys done as part of the research. And as I go through the list, I'm going to compare and contrast the blue pill habit with the red pill habit. And the first habit, deliver, actually I don't think it's changed. In the blue pill world, we need to deliver. In the red pill world, you need to deliver. Business is a performance sport. We are ultimately accountable for results. And so delivering results at whatever the field and function is that we're focused on is the first habit of trust. But the second habit, I think, has changed. In the blue pill world, I told you what to do with my bigger brain. And enough people believed in that it worked. Unfortunately, in the red pill world, not as many people want to be told what to do by people with bigger brains. My sons are 25 and 21. They hate being told what to do. I blame the parents. I don't know what happened, how it happened, but they are not as obedient as I was when I started work at British Gas in 1985. They question things, and they need reasons, and they're not just engaged because they need to be engaged. They have these complex questions. So we need to move from that blue pill habit of telling people what to do to the red pill habit of coaching. So Nandi's the organization Business Coach. There were no organizations in business life 15 years ago dedicated to coaching and coaching skills. That has sprung onto the agenda over the last 10, 15 years because people have recognized we need a different way to motivate and engage our people. And coaching, which involves listening, asking questions, empowerment, actually engages a red pill world and a red pill audience. Being consistent. There were some leaders when I worked at British Gas and Cadbury Schweppes in the early part of my career who prided themselves on unpredictability. They'd come in on a Wednesday and they'd do something different or say something different to what they did on a Monday. And the theory was it kept you on your toes. And it sort of did, where fear was the glue of life. But nothing destroys trust as quickly as unpredictability. So in the red pill world, consistency of behavior is massive as a habit. That when I encounter you as a leader on a good day or a bad day, that I can get consistent behavioral messages from you. The day that I catch you on the 100th day where you do something different to what you did on those other 99 days is the day that I remember, the day that you lost it. That's the day that I'll remember, and that's the day that trust was undermined. So consistency is an important ingredient. 3 habits of integrity. Be honest, be open, be humble. So be honest. So we knew in the blue pill world that we needed to be honest. The only difference in the red pill world is that the bar on honesty is now ruthlessly high. What we used to call game playing, gamesmanship, white lies, spin, if you get away with it, then it's fine. That now is much more ruthlessly assessed by our stakeholders. A good example from our own country on that, Team GB cycling, gold medal, gold medal, gold medal, gold medal, results, 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 results. I don't know how much media coverage it got in this country, but all it took in the UK was one jiffy bag of unknown contents that was handed to a cyclist before the Olympic Games. And there was then an allegation of drugs and, enhanced performance due to drugs, which has never been proven, but has ultimately brought down the whole brand of Team GB cycling. So again, it's guilty until proven innocent. The bar on honesty is incredibly high now in the red pill world. Being open. So being open is connected to this awful word, vulnerability. So in the blue pill world, when I'm at British Gas and Cadbury Schweppes, as an alpha male leader, I am taught, and I pride myself on not showing weakness. Because the moment I show weakness, it will be exploited against me. That's the belief system in the blue pill world. In the red pill world, the moment I show some vulnerability in the right place at the right time, I demonstrate that I'm a human being and therefore I'm one of you. And it's incredibly powerful in connecting and creating trust. Brené Brown, the author on vulnerability, says that vulnerability is the first thing I want to see in you and it's the last thing I want you to see in me. And that's pretty much been my rule for leadership. I love it when it happens, but can you go first, please? Yeah. But leaders go first. And so one of the habits, and I've had a 360 feedback on this, on my own model. I was only testing the tool, but unfortunately I got some feedback at the same time. And one of the habits that I'm working on is being open. It does not come natural to me. I hate it. But when I've experimented with it, I've realized it's quite powerful in creating trust and connection with the people that work with me in this work. Being humble. We have Jim Collins to thank for his work on being humble and the power of that in leadership. So Jim Collins' book, From Good to Great, again based on 11 years of scientific research, he concluded that the difference between level 4 leaders and level 5 leaders, which he called the pinnacle of leadership, he said that level 5 leaders have a paradoxical combination of intense professional will, they deliver, and extreme personal humility. They deliver, but they do it on behalf of a cause bigger than themselves. So that's where the why, we come back to the importance of the why. So I stand here today, and I hope that you don't think that I am bigging up John Blakey. What I want to big up is trust. That's my purpose, and that's what motivates me to stand up in front of you. It's because I'm passionate about trust. I'm hoping that I can still be humble whilst I am passionate, and that comes to these last 3 habits. Habit number 7, habit of benevolence, is this word evangelize. I don't know how this translates, but in the UK, evangelize is a religious word, primarily a religious word. It means spreading the good news. And what we're suggesting with that habit of evangelize is that if we're in a world where social media is spinning negativity and cynicism around our businesses and our brands 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we need to get on the front foot and evangelize about our businesses. We need to spread the good news about what we and our businesses are doing. And a lot of us in the blue pill world, we're brought up to think, let the results speak for themselves. Actually, that's not sufficient now. Guy Kawasaki has written a book called The Power of Evangelism in Business, and he says that in the social age, evangelism is everyone's job. We have to get out on the front foot and spread the good news about business and what business can do and is doing. Great example of evangelizing. In the UK, we have a National Health Service, the NHS. Massive organisation, massive employer. And there is a Twitter account that's been set up in the UK called NHS Million. And the description to the account says, our job is to spread 1 million good news stories about the NHS because we know the media and the government will not do this. Great example of evangelism. That, we do have that voice. We can use it. We can use it responsibly and positively with the technology that we have. Being brave. So I don't mean the physical, personal bravery of the blue pill world. I mean the moral bravery of the red pill world. So the slightly strange idea that at some point in the process, the leader will self-sacrifice on behalf of the wider good. I interviewed as part of the research a guy called Richard Pennicutt. He's the chief exec of the Co-op Group in the UK. In the year that I interviewed him, he took a voluntary pay cut of his base salary of £285,000. There were many people still thought he was paid too much after he'd taken the pay cut, but nevertheless, he took a voluntary pay cut, and he justified it by saying, I don't think it's right that I, as a head of a mutual company, should earn the same as the head of a PLC. So he wasn't regulated into doing that. He chose voluntarily to take the pay cut. Now, would I have done that? Or would I have been sat there thinking, hang on a minute, I've got a lot of responsibility, I've worked very hard to be in this position, I work 80 hours a week, I deserve every penny I get. I don't know what I'd have done, because I wasn't there. But £285,000 pay cut? I'm not sure I would have done it. But that's what brave, morally brave leaders do. And when they do it, it really inspires other people. And finally, last but not least, kind, being kind. If I'd have used this word in British Gas 30 years ago, I think they would have hounded me out of the building. And actually, I had a fantastic example of the power of kindness when I last came to this country. I was staying at the same place that Chris and I are staying in, the New York residence, and I got up on a morning I was going to present. I was presenting at the Stretch Leadership Conference in December, and I head off for the venue, and I walk down one of the underpasses under the roundabouts. And I get under the roundabout, and I look up, and there's about 13 different exits. And I'm thinking, is it left? Is it right? Should I go there? And I'm panicking. I'm looking at my watch, and thinking, I've got to present. I come out of one of the exits. I carry on walking, and about 10 minutes later, I realise I'm lost, completely lost. And I'm supposed to be presenting, in 15 minutes, panicking. So I walked up to this lady at the bus stop. And I said to her, I showed her the map on my phone. I said, can you tell me where this is? And she said, I'll take you there. And I went, no, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. You've got a bus to catch. Just tell me where it is. No, I'll take you there. And I'm thinking, strange. So she sort off down the road, and I'm following her sort of like this. And sure enough, 10 minutes later, we get to the venue. I could have hugged her. I could have kissed her. I mean, I said to her, look, and I said, what? Why did you do that? She said, well, I like to do something every day to help someone. And I'm thinking, you are mad. You are completely bonkers. If I'm in London, I'm walking down the road and somebody bumps into me and says, where do I get to there? I'm going, can't you tell I'm important? I've got a suit on. I haven't got time to do this sort of stuff. That's the blue pill stuff, right? So I notice kindness now because I've researched and come across the word. And it's like discovering a power tool that I never existed and realizing that it is a power tool. It can do amazing things. And I am working on that habit. And I realize that kindness is not about finding a cure for cancer. It's about tiny, noticeable things, random acts of kindness, making someone's day every day. And as the boss, you can make someone's day every day. That's one of the perks of the job, is that you've actually got the opportunity to do that with a thank you or a happy birthday or a whatever little thing is that makes that personal touch with someone, in the same way that woman who I would never meet again. But on that day, wow, it was great. And if she's doing that every day of the week, brilliant. What a great sort of example of the habit of kindness. So, that's the model, folks. That is the model. 9 habits and 3 pillars. Any questions about the habits that I've shared with you? Yep.
I'm just thinking, maybe you have an example of how you really stimulate the leaders to be like that, because like there should be some kind of drive to be kind, brave, open, and honest. And I'm thinking, if I tell that to my directors, they think that's super duper good.
Yeah.
But they are also evaluated, taking these KPIs, revenues, utilization rates, whatever.
Yeah. So that's where we have to go back to the beginning. Okay. And we have to say, if you develop those habits, if you as a culture develop those habits in your culture, this is what you will get. You will attract top talent, you will have loyal clients, you will have sustainable bottom line performance, you will have 74% less stress, 13% less sick days, 50% more productivity, 76% more engagement.
Which could be translated into business results.
Yeah.
So you need to translate it into money anyway, right? So
well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Because to me, the most stunning... I come from a real commercial background, where results, and I'll speak a little bit about that in a few minutes. But to increase productivity by 50%, the impact that has on market share, on revenues and turnover and profitability is huge. So I think the challenge in terms of influencing upwards is sometimes about, do you believe that the next generation of talents will only work for an organisation that is sustainable through having a triple bottom line philosophy? Because they don't want to work for organisations that are just focused on making money. That's what we do with that money. And therefore, in order to benefit from those, and there's nothing wrong, as John said earlier, there's nothing wrong with having very, very successful businesses that make a lot of money. It's what we choose to do with that money in terms of people, planet, or relationships and reputation that I think is a challenge we have in influencing business leaders.
And you are the owner of the business, right? So you're the ultimate decision maker in that, right? So that's why you're kind of looking into the future and trying to search the mission and whatever. Mm-hmm. We're maybe talking also about some kind of senior management, but really not the owners of the business, and they're evaluated by these owners on this scale.
Yeah.
So how is them?
Yeah. Well, I would with those people, I would definitely share this information. There's lots more information out there. There's a very powerful study that was done in Canada where, with a hotel chain, where a 1/8 improvement in the trustworthiness of the leaders led to a 2.5% increase in profitability. And I could quote these endlessly. There is lots of evidence out there that trust is great business. So what we're trying to present to leaders here is a very logical audit trail. We're trying to say to them, trust works, and here's some evidence that it works. And by the way, if you want to build trust, here's some evidence that tells you what you need to do. You need to do this. And they look at that and go, it's soft stuff. And you're going, well, yeah, but I've shown you the audit trail between the soft stuff and the hard results. And that's what you always have to do. When coaching first was introduced into the workforce, and I was involved in coaching, in 2000, 2001 in the UK, and I used to stand up, do sessions like this on coaching, and people would say, but it's just soft stuff, isn't it? It's never going to work because it doesn't lead to results. And the whole coaching industry had to face into that and persuade and find evidence and case studies to progressively convince people that coaching is good for business. And now coaching is a multi-billion-dollar industry around the world. So if you want to work with this, and if you want to take trust into your organization, you have to get very good at that story. You have to get very confident, agile, to be able to justify, go from the soft to the hard, from the hard to the soft, and keep helping people join the dots around that. Because you're right, if you can't, they will push it back, and they will say, yeah, it's great, but it's very idealistic, and it's never going to work around here.
It's also about fears, right? So you should work with the fears.
Yep.
That's all good, but then what should I do if I'm blamed that I didn't get the right revenue?
Yeah.
That's a lot that stands in the bottom. like of years and like
Yeah.
families credits and whatever.
Yeah, and there's fear of failure in leadership, which is always there, and leaders have always got to assess where is the most risk of failure, and that's again what we've been talking about today, is keep assessing that, because I think more and more leaders are going to say there's more risk on the side of me carrying on doing what I'm doing than there is on me trying something new. And this then is like, we're going to try something new, and they'll say to you, well, can you guarantee that's going to be successful? And you go, no, I can't guarantee it, but I give you evidence to suggest the risks are lower down that path than they are down this path. Yep. And the brave ones will get it and will try it. The Paul Polmans will try it. There are a lot of people who won't try it. But our job, I think, my job is, it's like, as I said right at the beginning, I'm looking for new believers. You're looking for new believers if you're wanting to find that person in the organisation that says, yeah, this is for me, I'm going to go with it, and I'm going to make it work, and I'm going to show them. And that's ultimately the drive that you need as a change agent, if it's going to be a change.
Do you have maybe an advice, a suggestion from which layer of management would be good to start? And from my understanding, it looks like we should convince first the highest.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a great question. Yeah. So, what part of my research was to look at that question in terms of what is the impact of different leaders at different levels choosing to go down this path, and the results of that is that over half of the explanation of high trust cultures can be attributed to the behaviour of the CEO and the senior leadership team. The single most important factor in creating a high trust culture is the behaviour of the CEO and the senior leadership team. And it's not everything. There are other things that are needed as well, but without it, it's very, very hard. So that's the best place to start, and that's why, as the Trusted Executive Foundation, we are aiming into the boardroom with this, because where we want to find the believers is in the boardroom, because we know if we find them there, we can work with that, and it's the most likely chance of success. The second best place, and this was true with coaching as well as with trust, was that you do find leaders who are heads of functions or divisions that have enough autonomy in some organisations to run with something and prove that it works, and they become like a pilot. They become like a pilot study for a new initiative. So ideally, if you're looking at this as a culture change thing, I'd be the best place undoubtedly is the CEO and the boardroom. The second best place is a highly committed, passionate, functional divisional leader who is willing to sort of use their autonomy to try and conduct a pilot experiment in their part of the business and prove that it delivers results, relationships, and reputation. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you so much.
These are great questions, because actually these are questions are right at the heart of how do I do this? If I believe in it, how could I possibly? And some of you might be sat there thinking, and actually I'll use this slide now because it's a bit out of order, but I'll use it now because I think it's sort of where we're at. Some of you might be thinking, this is all very well, but come on, how am I going to ever take this on in my organisation? You don't know my organisation. If you could just spend a day there, you'd realise that this wasn't going to fly. So what I'd say to that as a counter is I just want to share this parable about the starfish on the sea, on the beach, starfish on the beach. Has anybody come across this before, the starfish on the beach? This is a parable about empowerment and making a difference and the power of one. So the parable goes that overnight there's been a storm at sea. Thousands of starfish have been washed up onto the beach. And the morning after, there are two characters on the beach, an older guy and a younger girl. And the older guy is sat there, head in his hands, looking at this scene of devastation, shaking his head. The young girl is on the beach, and she's walking on the beach, and every so often she bends down, picks up a starfish, and throws it into the sea. then she carries on, bends down, picks up a starfish, throws it into the sea. The older guy watches this for 30, 40 minutes, gets curious, comes up to the girl and says, "What are you doing?" And she says, "I'm saving the starfish." And he says, "Well, you're crazy. You'll never save all the starfish." And she bends down, picks the starfish up, throws it in the sea and says, "I just saved another one." And it's that defiance. It's that defiance that you think you have to find in yourself at some point to say, I can find a starfish. I can do something. And if I do something, I'll at least feel that I'm part of the solution rather than part of the problem, however small that starfish might be. Because what's the alternative? The alternative is to give up and sit and watch. And that's not leadership. Leadership is that you do, against difficult odds, go onto the beach, you save the starfish, and you hope that that inspires other people to do the same. And then one day you wake up and the beach has been cleared and nobody knows how it happened. That's a model of change that can work, but it needs really passionate, brave leaders to start the process. But it's a red pill model of change. It's not somebody turning up on the beach with a load of stripes on their shoulder going, "Everybody clear the beach now." That's a blue pill model of change. And now everybody, half the people on the beach, shrug their shoulders and say, "No, I can't be bothered. Do it yourself." So we have to find a way to engage and motivate and mobilize. And that's mainly through role modeling and leadership by example. That is powerful, powerful stuff. And we are all able to influence someone. We're all able to find a starfish and do that. Does that sort of...
Yeah, making up.
Yeah, because it's a real thing, isn't it? It's a real problem that how do you keep yourself motivated every day to get up and face into that again and again and again? How do you do it? It's hard. You need help. You need to surround yourself with people who are also saving starfish. You need to read books about saving starfish. You need to go to talks like this occasionally, and then you get a little shot in the arm and go, "Right, yeah, I'm going to go back in tomorrow and I'm carrying on." Yeah, you have to take care of that if you're really in this game of wanting to make a difference. Sorry, I got a bit carried away there, but I've got a bit out of sync. But any more questions about the habits? So the final bit of the journey is you. It's all very well talking about Donald Trump and Paul Polman and Travis Kalanick. But what about you? What is your starfish? So what I want you to just take a bit of time to think about is, think about those 9 habits. Think about your business circumstances right now. And pick one habit that you think, for me, that's the one, that's my starfish. If I just make a little bit more effort with that one, it might be that will make a difference around here. Now, that could be a strength. You could be great at delivering. You could say, "Yeah, I'm going to really make that my hallmark and be famous for that." It could be a weaker one where you say, "To be honest, John, I don't really do evangelize. I don't really feel comfortable getting up on my feet and spreading the good news." Equally, it could be one that just your business needs right now. That, it could be that coaching, for example, it might just be that you're at that stage in the business cycle where you think actually coaching is the one because we as a business need more of that right now. And I could be someone who is pushing that agenda. So I'd like you to take a moment, think about those 9 habits, pick a habit, and then share that habit with your colleagues in the room, the person sat next to you. Share the habit and share the reason why that is the habit for you. And what I'd like to do is get us back such that we can see what we've got in the room in terms of which habits are the ones that, for us today, are the ones that are most relevant and practical for you to take away. Because if we can get to the point where you all know what the habit is, and you've all focusing on that starfish and saying, "Okay, that's the one I need to take an action around when I go back to the business," that's how we move it over a period of time just by taking little steps often. Okay? So just take 5 minutes on that, and then we're on track to close us out on time. So I hope that you're all coming back having chosen the habit. Yeah, you've chosen the starfish. You've picked it up. You haven't thrown it back in yet, but you've picked it up. So we're going to have a show of hands, because this is the great thing about models, isn't it? That once you've got a model, you can work with it. You can get people to play with it. You can do little charts like this and 5-bar gates. You can create 360 tools, and then it becomes practical, and you get people doing stuff. But so this is just a very simple example of how we start working with the model. So I'm going to ask for a show of hands at each habit. Who is choosing which habit in the room? Yeah? How many of you are focusing on delivery as the habit? 1, 2, 3.
Just one. We can select just one.
Just one. That's the rules of the game. Were you on delivery?
Yeah, I'm always. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But I selected different habits for myself.
Say that again.
I'm delivering always, but I've selected a totally different habit for myself.
Oh well. So I'm interested in the habit that you've chosen for yourself.
I'm not.
All right. Okay. Great. Good. Delivery 3. How many have you gone for coaching? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. Consistent. Who needs to be more consistent? 1, 2. Yep, 2. Very good. So then we can say we've got 10 linked to the ability pillar. Honest. Anybody going for honest? Nobody ever goes for honest. Nobody. Actually, one brave person did once go for honest in one of these sessions, but it was all about having honest conversations rather than, yes, I'm the dishonest person in the room. So, it's always 0, but surveys suggest that a lot of staff believe their managers are dishonest. So who's right? I don't know. Maybe that's where 360 feedback comes in. Being open. Who's going for being open? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Interesting. So a number of people thinking, yeah, maybe my next step is to be that little bit more open, show a bit of vulnerability at the right place, at the right time. Humble. Being humble. 1. Well, congratulations on being brave, because again, that's often, one that people say, I'm not sure where I'll put my hand up about that, but that's maybe one that I need to look at. So, yeah, being humble. So we've got 10 in the integrity pillar. Finally, benevolence. How many budding new evangelists do we need to create? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. I did this exercise in Scotland with a group in Scotland in the UK, and this was by far the most popular habit. And one of the participants said, "Yeah, I don't do evangelism. In fact, I don't think we do it as a country." So the whole of Scotland, we decided, needed to be more evangelical. So there's a cultural overlay on this, like there is everything else. Being brave. Who's up for being brave? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And who are our champions of kindness? 1, 2. Very good. So 14, 16 in there. So that's just a picture, isn't it? That's a picture of who this group is. Can we draw any conclusions from that? Maybe, maybe not. But it's data. It's data. We've got data now, and we can work with that data. If we're doing this with a team, then clearly we can see what the team makeup is like in terms of the habits. Because you don't have to be great at all 9. You can't be great at all 9, but a team can be great at all 9. But you need all the bases covered in the team. So this is just an example of, once you've got a model, these are the conversations you can have. So it's not about me coming up to you and saying, I don't trust you, because that's a conversation that doesn't go very far, very quickly. But if you have a model and you use it and you say, well, let's talk about the model rather than talking about you, this is a much more effective way of getting the discussion going and raising awareness and inviting people to take the next step. So, what I'd like you to do just personally and privately, literally just take 30 seconds. I'd like you each to think about an action related to the habit that you've chosen that you're willing to commit to take in the next week. So you've picked the starfish up, I'm inviting you to throw it in the next week. So what does it mean? How am I going to be one of the 9 people? Where is the opportunity next week where I might be a little bit more open with people? What is going to be my random act of kindness? Where am I going to be with someone where I'm going to do more listening and asking questions rather than telling them what to do? How am I going to sort of get feedback maybe around consistency and whether is that a challenge that other people see in me? So just take 30 seconds privately and capture an action, because ultimately as a coach, it's only actions that change things. And I would really find it fulfilling if as many people as possible took an action after coming to this session rather than just carried on doing what they were doing before. So, just before I introduce Chris to talk about the foundation a little bit more, I just want to show you, let me find it, that one. That's you doing your self-assessment with the model in a very crude, quick way. This is the results of a 360 feedback using the model. So what you've got is the green dots are the person's score for themselves, and the red circles are everybody else's perception. So you can see that in this 360 feedback using the model, the individual thought they were better at being open and being consistent than other people thought. But equally, you can see that other people thought they were much better at being humble, being kind, and evangelizing than they thought. So again, this is where models can help, because there's my perception of me, and then there's your perception of me, and then we can talk about it. So this is really where we want to take this work now, is to create tools and models that will allow leaders that want to go on the journey of trust themselves and with their teams, that we can help them do that. So the believers who really want to say, okay, I get it, but help me make this a reality. That's what we're committed to doing, and that's very much why we've set up the Trusted Executive Foundation. So I'll just invite Chris to share with you a bit more about where the why goes from here. So the why started where it started. It led to a book, it led to today, but our why we want to continue taking forward. And Chris will just share a bit more about that picture.
You get John for the morning and you get me for 5 minutes. That's good news. So just on that thought, one quote that I heard recently that really struck a chord with me is the quote that the illiterate of the 21st century are no longer those that can't read nor write. It is those that can't learn, unlearn, and learn again. Unlearn, learn, and learn again. And John's work has given us the platform to work with organisations, both in the corporate sector and the not-for-profit sector and the third place, to support them in how they unlearn and learn again. Because what you've seen this morning, not just from John's research and John's work, but unequivocally, is the evidence that there is a systemic change happening in terms of that organisational model, that red pill, that blue pill. And that's quite concerning, because a lot of CEOs and a lot of leadership teams don't necessarily have the answer. There's many people in this room that are responsible for leadership and development and responsible for coaching. And I think there's an awful lot of leaders out there, and I was one of them, that struggled with how did they transition from the old model to the new model. But unequivocally, if they don't, they're going to be unsustainable in the next few years. I was very fortunate in my career to work in, I have a broad range of roles and responsibilities. Most recently, I was a chief commercial officer for a UK hotel group. And it was private equity backed, and I was working on behalf of private equity investors. And we were working around, turning that business around to exit last year, which we successfully did. But what I saw, and where I had a real conflict and a real tension, was that there were bundles of ability, there was aspects of integrity, but there was next to no benevolence. And that compromised the trust within the organisation because it was private equity driven. And the only thing that the private equity partners who had 90% of the business wanted when we ran up to the sale was to maximise the return on investment. That actually cost them money. We exited and we sold the business in September last year for the region of in excess of 300 million euros. We ended up in exclusivity with one partner. If we kept other partners, potential buyers at the table, we probably would have sold more. But the other people walked away because they didn't like being in private equity because all they were focused on was the customers. So what the Trusted Executive Foundation is designed to do, and where I joined John, and having known John for 15 years and watched his work and shadowed his work, is I feel passionate now that there's a time and a place to really help leaders, to help senior leadership teams, to help coaches, to help HR directors and leadership development directors to really start to transform what they do and how they move this forward. Because to some of the questions that were asked earlier, I don't think employees and staff leave organisations, they leave their leaders. And they leave their leaders because there's a breakdown in trust. Who in this room makes a conscious decision to stay in a personal relationship where there's no trust, or where that trust is compromised and broken? So, I wouldn't stay in a personal relationship where trust was undermined. So why would I work within an organisation where that trust is compromised? And increasingly, from a diversity perspective and from a millennial perspective, the next generation coming through are demanding trust as a minimum expectation to work with an organisation as a triple bottom line philosophy. But as John says, it's up to you to take your stance and take it back. So the Trusted Executive Foundation, as you've seen today, our passion is about redefining a new standard of leadership through trust and measuring the success of that trust, aligning those 9 habits, those 3 pillars, to a compelling triple bottom line. And I come from that commercial background, and when people would come in and present, and I would sit in audiences like you sat in today, I'd want evidence. And that evidence is there. So I think the way we need to go back to our leaders now is to talk about the evidence is about how you create that sustainable bottom line, how you drive forward your business results, whatever those KPIs be, your relationships and your reputation. And what we do is we do that in a number of ways. So we're building the Trusted Executive Foundation to provide a number of services and products that enable us to accelerate the impact of trust within organisations to drive those 3 bottom lines. And we do that through John's work, as John shared with you today. Often that leaves leaders thinking, I get that, so what do I do next? What's the practical help? So we built out the Trusted Executive Foundation to enable there to be executive coaches, to have consultancy, to have leadership development, to have cultural change, and to work with organisations to really put trust at the heart of what they do. And we do that through a series of tools, as John's touched on. We have 360s and we have trust surveys. What's most important, though, is our primary purpose for doing that, our real mission, is, as you heard at the top from Andy, as you heard, the fact that we're a not-for-profit organisation. Because what beautifully completes the circle for me is that our real passion is the profits that come from our work enable us to invest in the leadership, development and capability in Christian charities. So rather than just gifting to Christian charities, we want to enable them to be more sustainable, to be more self-sufficient in order to increase their contribution and add more value in their children's sector. That's a little bit about the foundation. And we're building that business, we're building that partnership. And I think what's really interesting with Nancy, when we talk about learn, unlearn, and learn again, change is inevitable, we all know that. We can see the pace of change that is touching us in every aspect of our lives. And culturally, where are you? Where is Budapest? Where is Hungary today compared to maybe where is London? Where is the UK? But that pace of change is increasing. And I think this is an opportunity to really make a difference and to work in partnership with and the business coach is just such a wonderful, humbling opportunity to do so. So, any questions on the foundation or its purpose? Getting towards lunchtime. So thank you very much. Let me pass you back to John to close.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And the rest of our visit actually here in Budapest is working with these tools and training the team that Nandi and Business Coach have developed in order that there is a local capability that can help around implementing this model. So that's the rest of our visit. So we've come to the end of the journey, folks. I hope it's been enjoyable. I hope it's been thought-provoking and action-provoking. In terms of where we've been, we started at the top left with the trust crisis. We heard from Richard Edelman that we all need to get out of the traditional box. We thought about that as a risk, but also as an opportunity for our leadership and our business. We then went top right to think about leadership. Where has leadership been? The old model built by 19th century economists, the new model that's been built by 21st century psychologists, and we introduced this metaphor of the blue pill and the red pill because it's a simple way of trying to talk about a shift and a paradigm shift. And sometimes those simple metaphors can help people really sort of connect with the shift. We then went bottom left, talk about trust model. We learned about ability, integrity, and benevolence, 3 pillars, and then the 9 habits of trust. And bottom right, we finished really with you and this call to action really around: are you on the beach? Have you found your starfish? Are you willing to pick it up and throw it? If you are, great, we're with you, we'd love to help. If for you right now that's not what you think is the next step and imperative, then thank you for listening anyway. But I hope that we've got a few more believers in the room than we had at 9 o'clock. Any parting sort of questions or thoughts before we wrap up?
I have a practical question. Is it possible that we get the charts in some way?
The slides?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the slides, we can make the slides available. This website, johnblakey.co.uk, there's a lot of material on that website in terms of videos, articles, downloadable resources. One of the downloadable resources is a self-assessment tool that uses the model and has 3 behaviors for each habit, and allows you to assess against that more detailed view of the model. So that's a free download on the website. There's quite a lot of material out there if you want to pursue it further. The book is on Amazon. There's a Kindle version. I haven't got many copies of that with me for the trip just because of the limitations of Ryanair's cabin policy. But obviously, be delighted if some of you dipped into the book and found more help in that. Thank you. Yeah, any other questions? So, we're closing out with a poem. This is a poem from D.H. Lawrence, who somewhat irritatingly captured in 73 words everything I've been trying to do for 7 years, only in a much better way. But that's what poets do, isn't it? So he wrote this poem called Trust. Oh, we've got to trust one another again in some essentials, not the narrow little bargaining trust that says I'm for you if you'll be for me, but a bigger trust, a trust of the sun that does not bother about moth and rust, and be a son to me, not a weary, insistent personality, but a sun that shines and goes dark, but shines again and entwines with the sunshine in me. We've got to trust again. So be a son to me. So I hope that you will be a son to your stakeholders in the coming days. You will save your starfish, and most of all, keep taking the red one. Thank you very much.